Good morning. Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Marisol Dicion and I'm the Managing Director at Women of Influence Plus. And thank you for being here with us this morning for Paychecks and Portfolios, the financial playbook for every career stage. Today we are joined by Celine Matthews Nagash, a chartered investment manager and certified financial planner with Wealth Simple. We are going to talk about how women can take control of their financial futures. From starting out, switching career paths, and navigating big transitions, this event is all about building wealth on your terms. Welcome, Celine.
Thank you, Marisol, and thank you to Women of Influence for sponsoring and or hosting this event. I'm really excited to get this conversation going.
Yes, and just before we dive right in, I do want to take a moment to thank Wealth Simple for sponsoring this event. Their commitment to providing accessible expert guidance makes conversations like this possible. So thank you, Wealth Simple, for being a part of this important dialogue. And one more piece of housekeeping, if you have any questions, please do share them in the comments section. Our team member, Rachel, is moderating that section and will pop questions into our chat so we can address them at the end of our Q&A. So Celine, turning over to you, when we spoke last week in preparation for this event, we chatted about the importance of understanding one's money mindset, which is often influenced by different factors, our cultural background, personal experiences, and even societal narratives around success and wealth. What are your thoughts on how women can begin to recognize and reshape these underlying beliefs?
Yeah, that's a great question and something we discussed, I believe, last week, just in further detail of how important it is to actually recognize one's money mindset. And I think, as simple as it sounds, the first step to getting there is understanding that there are different money mindsets, and it's normal for you to have different feelings, attitudes, beliefs about money. And I think that that is something that is not as well understood because a lot of the financial recommendations or resources out there, it's very linear, it's very one size fits all. And it doesn't leave room to, modify those resources for how a person approaches money. And especially for women, it really is something to consider because we need to be challenging those societal narratives. And I think, a lot of women forget that we have been left out of the conversation for a very long time. Uh, I believe women were able to actually open a bank account on their own for the first time in 1964. That wasn't that long ago. So, really, I think the first step is to recognize that money mindsets are there and it's normal to have different attitudes and beliefs based on how you grew up, your culture, um, surrounding money. And then, two, I would say talk about money. So, we have been left out of the conversation for so long. So, really taking that power back by talking about money, getting to know what's going on with your own finances is going to help just work through personal experiences that may have shaped your financial outlook and help you recognize in beliefs that you have about money that maybe you don't know about that stem from how you grew up or your culture.
That's a great response, Celine, because what I feel you've underscored there is the importance of approaching the arts that is wealth management in a very holistic way and recognizing what known or even subconscious beliefs might be impacting the way you approach your finances. And that leads really well into my next question, which is perhaps starting from the mindset and then moving into financial planning as it relates to one's career trajectory. And as many of us online today will agree, a woman's career trajectory is or tends to be anything but linear. It's not necessarily a ladder ascent. So why do you think traditional financial advice often misses the mark when it comes to, financial planning that assumes a straight line career path?
Yeah, and this is so unfortunate, but as I mentioned, women were not included in these conversations for a very long time. And so things were built, systems were put in place, resources were established that does not accurately account for us, unfortunately. Traditional financial advice has been based on largely men's career trajectories in mind. And historically, if we look, as I'm sure you know, Marisol, men have a lot less, fewer career interruptions. They're going to have higher lifetime earnings with the very real gender pay gap that we experience. Typically, they also have more access to employer sponsored benefits. So, women's lives and our finances in general tend to be more dynamic, and that one size fits all model falls very short.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're talking about, when we talk about these, I don't like to use the word interruptions because it has a negative connotation,
Yeah.
but things like caregiving responsibilities, career pivots, stepping away from work for a little bit, life absolutely happens, and it happens differently for women. So, how can women use financial planning to stay in control no matter what path they may find themselves on?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I also agree. Interruptions does give that negative connotation when really it should be something that's celebrated majority of the time. But I would say the real solution is you want a financial plan that is going to evolve with your life realistically, and it's going to be flexible depending on what that goal or what your life outlook looks for you. So I think some actionable points that women can take away is you want to be building a financial cushion because for those periods where you're stepping away from work, you want to be prepared. You want to have an emergency fund set aside ready to help support you during that time so you don't feel like you're missing out in any way. You also want to be using those tax advantaged accounts strategically to maximize benefits. So, this is something that's not talked about as much, but if you're investing in an RRSP, maybe you don't want to invest in an RRSP when you're staying home because your income isn't going to be as high on paper, and you want to shift those RRSP contributions to when you're back to work, for example. You also want to just have a good idea of government benefits. And I know majority of us are aware that, we get Canada Child Benefit, but how many people know what that exact amount is or what the amount available is if you are on maternity leave or parental benefits or even your employer benefits? Really, knowledge is power, especially for women. We need to have a good understanding of what this looks like before we're in the situations and actually receiving it. And lastly, we live longer than men. So we really want to be factoring in longevity to any retirement planning and ensuring that the financial advisor that you're working with or the numbers that you're looking at is factoring in that longevity so that you're in a healthy position throughout retirement.
That's a great point because I think I read a stat earlier this week, it's Tuesday, that women are now living on average, I think it's 20 years longer than men, at least in Canada.
Yeah.
So definitely something to consider. Now, Celine, money in general can feel overwhelming, and sometimes just getting started is the hardest part. So, to everyone who's listening right now and anyone who's wondering where to begin, what would you recommend is the first move they should make?
Yes. So I always say when we're looking at a financial playbook or financial health check, it is more of an art than a science. So it really can depend for an individual person. But I always say a good place to start is just getting a general understanding of where you are today and where you want to go. So wealth building or financial planning, it can look different to different people depending on those beliefs and those money mindsets. Maybe the idea of building wealth to you is being able to care for your family members. Maybe it's owning a home. Maybe it's growing your family. So you want to get an idea of what is valuable to you. What are we saving for? By having that idea, we're able to harness that drive and be able to, go after those goals once they're established. But we can't go after the goals until we know what's going on right now. And this is one of the harder parts of just looking at the numbers. So we want to know what is your income, what expenses are going out, get an idea of what those fixed expenses are, and also what you need to enjoy life in the now. Um, as women, I would also say it's very important to understand your compensation fully. So you want to know what your overall compensation looks like with your employer, including any equity, pension matching that they offer, and your salary in general.
Now, I want to ask a follow up question that might seem obvious, but probably often isn't. Why is that precision so key when it comes to knowing line by line what is coming in, what is going out? in the short term and long term?
Mhm. So one, I think it builds the long-term habit of having an idea of this throughout your financial life. Um, and when we know those numbers, we're then able to get a good plan and a solid plan that works for you for investing or saving or paying down debt, whatever the biggest priority is for your life, to help you achieve your goals. And the danger of not knowing those exact numbers is setting goals that are too grand, and then you fail, and then you feel bad, and then you are guilty, and it takes a while to sort of pick back up. You really want the numbers to set achievable goals so you're staying motivated while working towards whatever those goals are. And on the flip side, sometimes we achieve goals, and we could have done a lot more. We just didn't know where the money was coming from, or sort of what money we had to work with to optimize now.
Thank you so much for framing that, Celine, because as our goals will shift as our careers as our careers grow with us, and as our mindsets shift, and things that we value when we were in our early 20s, for example, might be different as we approach, our midlife. So most of our audience members, or many of them, may find themselves in their peak earning years. What would you recommend is the smartest way to grow wealth while still keeping options open for the future if you're in this stage of your life?
Yes, that's a great question. These peak earning years are really important to utilize as best we can, but also enjoy. But I think during those peak earning years, you especially, doubling down here, want to know what that compensation looks like. Make sure that you are taking advantage fully of any employer pension or match program. And when it comes to investing and saving, this is when you want to ensure you are maximizing those tax efficient accounts, such as RRSPs, which will help you reduce your taxes during those higher income years, and TFSAs that allow you to have flexibility and tax free growth. You also want to pay yourself first, which sounds so simple, but really it's the act of, instead of waiting until after all your expenses are paid, after you've done your groceries and shopping and scheduled those trips, seeing what's left over and saving it, try saving first so that it's out of sight, out of mind. You're paying your future self first, and then you're able to accurately budget whatever is left over. It will really help. And if you can automate this, it will be even easier, because during these peak earning years, especially if you have kids as well, life gets so busy. So you may have the ability to save, but it's so hard to stay on track of a million things. So if you're automating when your paycheck comes in, for example, you're saving $300 automatically into your RSP. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to check in. Those automations are really going to help support you through investing strategically for growth during these high earning years.
Celine, you brought up the importance of knowing how to leverage taxes and tax breaks. So let's talk about taxes.
Yeah.
They're not just something that we deal with, they're actually a powerful tool. And what are some smart tax strategies that women should be using to hold on to more of what they earn?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think this is something that I would have that trusted financial advisor to go to discuss. As I mentioned, there's going to be unique situations, but in general, I would say you want to optimize your RSP contributions. And maybe that starts with just knowing what that looks like, which you can find on your MyCRA website when you're logged in. This will help reduce your taxable income and help really maximize any tax refund or reduce taxes payable. You also want to utilize income splitting strategies if you have a partner or spouse. And this can be done through ensuring that you're maximizing each other's TFSAs. You can use spousal RSPs if there's a large difference in take home pay. And in retirement, we then want to look to try and equalize that income, share that pension income, which will bring you both hopefully into a lower tax bracket, which will help save taxes overall. Um, One thing I just want to throw out there, FHSAs, the first home savings account, an incredibly powerful tool if you have not yet bought or have become a first time home buyer. Even if you don't plan on buying a home, I think that's the reality for a lot of people right now in Canada with the housing market. You still have access to that account and you can use it alongside your RRSP. So definitely chat with your advisor on that if you do fit into that category. And tax benefits. So keep track of any childcare expenses. Those can be used to reduce taxes. You can also deduct courses that enhance your career growth. That will help you reduce your taxes. And if you are investing in a non registered account, any fees, you can deduct those as well. So just, yeah, I'd say working with your advisor on these things, but just knowing what are the tax benefits, utilizing the tax appropriate accounts such as RSPs, TFSAs, or FHSAs if applicable, and maybe even looking at tax efficient investment strategies.
These are fantastic insights, Celine. I think we do have some resources in the comments section, which I just wanted to call our audience's attention to, where details like this can be found. But also, please share your questions in the comments. Our team member Rachel is moderating, and we will try to get to your questions towards the end of our Q&A. Celine, can we circle right back around to something we opened up with, which is women tend to live longer, as we stated. They take more career breaks, so retirement planning definitely needs to look a little bit different. What should women be thinking about now so that we feel secure and ready for what's next?
Yeah, and I think this is something, recency bias is real, where you may know somebody that didn't live past 70, and you may think, well, that's likely going to be me. But statistically, as you mentioned, Maricel, that's not the case. So we just want to be prepared for that longevity that women typically do have. So one way to do that is start saving early. And, I think a lot of people wait until they have this magic number. So why invest if I don't have $1,000 a month to invest? What's the point? Well, when you are starting early, uh, that compounding will really grow over time. It will make a big difference. But more importantly, if you're able to invest $100 a month today, you're building that habit and that rhythm. And as your income grows, as you get more settled within life, naturally, you're going to be able to increase those savings easier. Whereas I'm talking to people now approaching retirement that, they have that capital, they have that income, but they don't have the habit. And that's something that is arguably harder to build at times. So, really starting early, even if it's a small amount. You also want to have an idea of the lifestyle you would like to have in retirement before you retire. So, we all know retirement will happen and we're all hoping for it, but I will speak to somebody a couple years out and they don't actually know what retirement looks like to them. Think about what that retirement lifestyle is to you so we can get an idea of the expenses needed. And then once we're there, we can look at, well, what will you get from OAS, CPP, and any work pension? Now we need to fill the gaps with investments. And so the earlier we sort of have an idea of what that is, the less work it takes to accomplish that goal and reach it. And lastly, just working with an advisor on these projections. And if you are working with an advisor, ensuring they are taking into consideration longevity risk and looking at that longer time horizon.
Now, a lot of the financial advice, especially when it comes to investing, can feel overwhelming. When do I start? Can I start? I have debts to pay off. I don't have enough to start. As you pointed out earlier, enough can be, it's extremely subjective.
Yeah.
So, especially for someone who feels like they're potentially behind, what are some practical ways to make it simpler and actually get moving?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I really think it starts with the small steps. Those will lead to big outcomes. And also realizing that it is never too late. Even the clients that I'm speaking with that are approaching retirement, there's still so many things that we can do to optimize now. So I think first and foremost, I would say start with the financial snapshot. So, what do I mean by that? Have an idea of what you currently own, so including cash, investments, real estate. I feel like life is busy. There's lots of different bank accounts, there's lots of banks, and sometimes I'll talk to clients and they have, an old savings account that they forgot about at another bank that they opened. So just getting an idea of what is currently there to work with. Then you want to understand what you owe. So any debts, credit card, mortgage, and the interest rates on that debt. And then lastly, you want to get a good idea of what you earn. So, what is the money coming in after tax that we have available to work with to achieve the goals? Once you have that financial snapshot, the waterfall method is something I believe that is approachable and smaller steps. So you sort of want to start with building an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses. Then we look at paying off high interest debt. So that would be credit cards, anything that you are carrying a balance on. Then we look at taking advantage of employer benefits and pension, and also beginning to automate savings while paying off the smaller interest debt, or the good debt that we aren't worried as much about, such as a mortgage. Um, to do all of this, there's so many apps out there now. So using budgeting apps for easy tracking, even some of the bank apps, it will give you an idea of what your expenses are or what you're spending in a month to help you track it. And I think through everything, in order to really get to that momentum, as you mentioned, Maricel, we want to celebrate the small wins. So we really want to give ourselves grace. You are going to mess up, the budget will break. You want to celebrate the small wins and also balance that with knowing it won't always work out perfectly, and it's just part of the overall journey. It's not the end of the journey.
Celine, can we build on that small wins call out? So small wins obviously helps maintain momentum, the mental fortitude to continue moving upwards towards your goals. Do you have any other tips to sustain this, this path of learning and development when it comes to your finances and wealth?
Yeah, I would say that when it comes to building that confidence and, just the goals in general and maintaining the motivation, it could be as simple as, let's say we've set some smaller actionable goals. You want to build that emergency fund of 3 months of expenses. Well, attach a gift to yourself for when that happens. It could be a purchase that you've been thinking about, it could be taking yourself out to dinner, it could be a spa day, but attaching like rewards for yourself for achieving these financial goals will really help to just maintain the motivation and have that path move forward and just help you celebrate those wins and keep you on track.
Amazing. We are almost going to be running out of time, and I have a few more questions to get through. One of the questions that came through our audience members. So, for someone who's listening and ready to take action today, what's the one thing you tell them to do first?
That's a great question. So I would say schedule a money date with yourself and your partner. If you have a partner, you want to review your current financial situation. As I mentioned, that financial snapshot, just get an idea of what the numbers look like. Maybe journal it, write it down, and yeah, just start there. After that, I would say use some of the resources to help. Knowledge is power. So you want to educate yourself on what that next step is, how investing works. While Simple has great resources that are, um, we try really hard to get rid of any jargon to make it very digestible. We have an investing masterclass. I would even say it's funny. I believe we will link our advisor insights page that has many articles on many different topics. So you can go through there. And I would also say get a second opinion. So, for those things that you do currently have, so your investments that you've already set, do a portfolio review. Find out what is the strategy here? Does it align with my lifestyle, that longevity, whatever my goal is? And if you're having trouble doing that, this is something that we do regularly at Well Simple for clients. It's free of charge, and currently we also have a promotion. I believe it's 2% on RSPs and liras and 1% on transfers for any other account type. And so will essentially just give you the knowledge, and you're then able to make a decision of, okay, this makes sense for me where I'm at, or maybe Well Simple is a good option.
Wonderful. Next question. What are some exercises and questions you can ask yourself to understand your money mindset?
Mm. That is a good question. So I would say, when are you spending money? That's a really powerful question. So for example, my sister is somebody that uses, more of the retail therapy approach. So if she were to look at things, she would be somebody that spends money when she's in these higher stress situations or maybe more emotional situations, or something's going on in her life personally, which isn't a bad thing. It's just knowing your tendencies. So by looking at your pattern of when you spend money, you'll be able to see what that money mindset is. Or, for example, maybe you're somebody that it's actually hard for you to spend money and you find yourself going down rabbit holes and doing a lot of research to try and almost explain that spending to yourself and allow you it. And that's not always the best approach either. We want to be equally enjoying our lives now as well as saving for the future, and saving for retirement. So really just getting a sense of, when am I spending money? Is it associated with any cultural beliefs or maybe how I grew up, or maybe one of my money mindsets will give you a good idea and a good place to start.
Excellent. Wonderful tips. Thank you. Next question from our audience is, when do you know when you're ready to invest?
This is a great question. So I think people may argue that you want to pay down any high interest debt. So you really want to focus on, if you are carrying a balance on a credit card, um, trying to put more than that minimum, because the minimum is really there to keep that balance and make it so that it's almost impossible to pay off that debt in full. So if you're able to pay down more than that minimum, I would also argue that even just starting with $20 a month or a very small amount of investing simultaneously on the side, just to start building that habit and getting an idea of what that market fluctuation looks like, is a good place to start. So first, I would say high interest debt. Once that is more than the minimum payments, that's sort of when you are in a position to begin investing a small amount alongside building that emergency fund.
And Celine, what kind of investments should you explore, begin with?
That's a great question. So it really depends on how comfortable you are with volatility. We like to say at Wealthsimple that the best portfolio for you is one that you can stick with through the good times and the bad. So that might be a lower risk investment, but if you were in something that was a lot higher risk, more volatile, if you jump off that roller coaster, on the bottom, then you're doing more damage than good. And you would have just been better off in something more conservative that you're comfortable with. When we're looking at building the portfolio, you want to focus on, it doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to, be a active management strategy. We really focus on a well diversified, low cost portfolio of ETFs. And that's something that we do at Wealthsimple. You can look into our investment strategy just on the public page, even if that gives you just more knowledge to go off somewhere else or to go off on your own. I would say that's a good place to start.
Excellent. Well, Celine, it has been wonderful chatting with you. Any last pieces of advice or tips or any last, words of wisdom when it comes to wealth building?
I would say, let's try and normalize as much as possible talking about money with your friends, with your family. The earlier, the better. As uncomfortable as it may seem at the start, it's really going to give us just the tools to succeed moving forward. Know what money is coming in, know what money is going out. And if you don't know your credit score, I would say try and get an idea of what that is as well. You can use apps such as Borrowwell just to get a good hold there.
Great last words for our event today, Celine. Thank you so much. Thank you again to our sponsor, Wealthsimple. And stay tuned and keep in touch with us on LinkedIn because we have special programming for the month of March for our LinkedIn Lives. Thanks again, Celine. It was wonderful chatting with you. And thank you to the Women of Influence Plus community for all your support and, as always, for tuning in.
Thank you. Thank you, Marisol.